Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. Now, whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense show.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Bottled Business Sense Show. I'm Rick Moscoso with R2 Visual Studios, and I'm here with my co-host this morning, Bill Bernard.
Good morning, Rick. Good to be with everyone again today. We're gonna try to talk about something that I think hopefully will be important to a lot of our viewers.
Excellent. Well, for the first-time viewers out there, we are the Bottled Business Sense Show, and basically what we are is a program that talks about business, legal, and marketing aspects of your business. We like to overview and those sort of topics, and feedback from our viewers is of paramount importance to us because that's how we really shape what we talk about.
Yeah,
right, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great overview, Rick. What we're really trying to do is combine a way to two methods. How to protect your business and make sure it functions properly and smoothly, and also part of the vehicle that you use to make it function smoothly is the marketing that you utilize. And of course, media marketing is so important in today's changing world. So yeah, that's what we're here for. We're here for the small business owner. And today I thought what we talk about is a combination of a few things that we talked about in the past.
Yeah, right. In past shows you talked a little bit about estate planning.
Right.
I believe it might have even been in the last show you talked about entity protection.
Right. A couple shows ago, I believe, we talked about entity protection. So I thought today it would be kind of unique to show everyone how you might take estate planning and use a particular estate planning tool and utilize it with asset protection and incorporate the personal and business part of your assets and make sure they're all solidly protected.
Oh, interesting. So a combination of both.
Well, it's interesting you asked that because I've always said that what we're really dealing with in my area of the law is estate asset protection planning. I never really have believed that the two are distinguishable. But having said that, I think in today's show, I'm going to try to give some of the basics. It's a very complicated area. It's not going to be easy to provide everything within the short span of time of our show. So I'm going to try to give the basics with the hopes that if anybody wants anything more specific, obviously they can contact either myself or someone that they trust. No pun intended.
Great. Well, I know for a lot of the viewers out there, this is going to be new territory, new information for them. So, our goal is not to overwhelm you.
That's right.
But to give you some food for thought. And if you have any questions as the show goes on here, Bill will give his contact information, and you can go into that with more detail with him.
That's right. That's exactly what we want to do. So I thought the way we'd start the show today would be to give some of the general purposes of what an irrevocable trust is, a trust that cannot be revoked, and then some of the benefits of that tool as an asset protection vehicle. Okay. And one thing I want to say right away, and I know a lot of people out there are going to have a chuckle, and they're going to say, "Boy, these lawyers, they say one thing, but they never really mean it." I call it an irrevocable trust. There are certain ways that an irrevocable trust can be broken or revoked. They're not the easiest thing in the world to accomplish. It's not the easiest goal in the world to accomplish. But again, that's something that's very, very specific, and you need to see your lawyer about if that ever comes to pass. So having said that, the general purposes then of an irrevocable trust, that is one you cannot revoke generally, would be the asset protection that it provides and the tax benefits that it provides. That's going to be two critical things that an irrevocable trust is going to do for you. And I'm going to touch on just a couple of tax things, but I really want to leave a lot of that to the accounting department. And when somebody wants to see their accountant, I could give them the basics as it applies to estates. But for all other purposes, what the value of their estate might be and how they're going to do their taxes, that's something for the accountant.
Yeah, I know you've mentioned this in the past before, but really, with what you do, works very closely hand in hand. Yes. With making sure that you have the right accountant or an accountant.
That's right, Rick, and that's why, in addition to yourself, I think an attorney and an accountant are what you have to have on board when you begin or have even had your business operating for a period of time. You need a marketing person, an attorney, and an accountant. I can't stress that enough. So anyway,
all right.
Let me give you some of the basics of an irrevocable trust. Let's leave the business side of it out just for a second. So let's say you have a residence and you want to protect the residence from creditors. You could set up an irrevocable trust and transfer that property into the trust. Now, unlike a revocable trust, an irrevocable trust has a third-party trustee. You cannot be the trustee. That trustee, by way of the trust now owns the property. The trustee manages that trust. So it's the trust that now owns the home. Now, some of the benefits of this is you can sell that residence to the trust and buy a new home or a new piece of property if that's what you're trying to do. And when this property inside the trust leaves the trust, when it passes upon your death, your beneficiaries get the tax basis pursuant to the appraisal that's done on the property at that time. So not at the time you transfer the property into the trust. We all hope our property values rise. So for tax purposes, your beneficiaries are going to be somewhat protected because they're going to get the appraised value of the property that they receive upon your death, not the value of the property at the time you transferred it into the trust.
Okay, so for our viewers here, who do you typically recommend that third party be?
Well, that third party should be someone you trust. Yeah. That third party should be someone that you have have an affiliation with over the years that you know will do what's right. Now, I know that's a general overall kind of a area that we would expect an attorney to say or would expect anyone to say. But, you know, a trust really does have as its basis the import of trusting someone. There's never any foolproof means to do this. But if you do have some second thoughts, then the best way to go would be a third-party business trustee, such as a bank or some financial institution or insurance company that will work pursuant to law as the trustee and that has no vested interest in the proceeds of the trust. Let's talk a little bit about now how you combine asset protection into this irrevocable trust. And we've talked about businesses. Okay, we've talked about LLCs and corporations that are operating as a business.
Right.
Let's say, Rick, you own an LLC. You're running your business. And you want to make sure that that LLC has foolproof, and I'll use that word loosely, but let's say foolproof asset protection. Let's say you want to make sure that this business is now going to be part of your irrevocable trust. For whatever reason, you've decided an irrevocable trust is the way to go. You want to make sure you have complete asset protection. The business does provide some protection against creditors, obviously, but it limits the business assets to what the creditors can reach if it's not in the irrevocable trust. Now you put the business in the irrevocable trust. Who owns the trust? I mean, who owns the business now?
The trust does.
The trust does. So now, in order for even the business assets to be reached, who would have to do something wrong?
The trust.
The trust would have to do something wrong, right? And of course, we're leaving out of this discussion the presumption of fraud. Assuming there's no fraud and no way to attempt to overturn any transaction, we're going to move forward from there. Okay. So now you've got your business and your trust. Let's say the LLC makes a distribution. Who can the LLC make a distribution to? Who can they distribute some of the profits to? Who would you think would be a natural person to have that have in place for that?
Would it be the owner of the trust or beneficiaries?
Well, remember, the owner now of an irrevocable trust cannot be the beneficiary.
Okay.
Okay? But who can be? His spouse.
His spouse.
Right?
Right.
So money can be distributed from the LLC to the spouse, and the spouse can take advantage of having that as part of whatever the income is for the household, right? And in fact, without getting too in-depth about this, you can also have part of what is distributed as a gift, which would then be non-taxable. So a portion of up to $14,500 would be non-taxable gift income. Any income that the LLC distributes over that per year to the spouse would be taxable income, but nevertheless, your spouse is drawing income from your LLC, which is no longer your LLC, but belongs to the trust, but yet you can benefit by way of the spouse receiving the money.
So what happens in the case when there is no spouse, but there may be children in the family?
Sure, you could have the children be the beneficiaries.
Okay.
But let's say you are alone. And let's say you still want to do this. And again, why you want to do this really has a lot to do from an asset protection standpoint. You may have a sizable estate and you want to make sure it's absolutely protected from creditors or malicious lawsuits, especially in the highest form possible. Mm-hmm. That's why you're doing this from an asset protection standpoint. Okay. Having said that, now how are you going to benefit in terms of income when the business is in the irrevocable trust? Well, who's the manager of your LLC, Rick?
That would be me.
You.
Right.
Would you think you might have a right to draw an income from that LLC?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the LLC inside the irrevocable trust now pays you an income for running the LLC business. Now, you'll be taxed on that income, but you're taxed on income anyway, right?
Yeah.
So now you are receiving portions of the income from the business that's in a trust that you don't own. Okay. And we can take this a step farther.
Now, there's not a situation in the description you just laid out where it would be where me as the owner of the LLC could take distribution and be tax-free.
Well, everyone would like that. There are ways to have your income. If you want to, let's use the word loosely, income. You can structure that in a way that some of it might not be taxable. But again, that's more in the area of what an accountant could do for you. Other than receiving income as a gift, I would defer you to a tax accountant to be able to decide for you whether or not some of this income is taxable, non-taxable.
Okay, fair enough.
So income could always be placed in many different types of investment vehicles that provide less or non-taxable status, right?
Right.
So that would be something you'd want to set up in terms of how you want your employment situation structured and how you want your income. For example, I put my money in a SEP IRA, and that IRA takes part of my income. It takes away from my tax basis, so my income is lower by having put it in the SEP IRA. Some of my income in the SEP IRA, my net income that I'm going to be taxed on is now lower.
All right.
So you can see how this can get more and more involved depending. That's why, again, you need an attorney, you need an accountant.
Right.
Okay, so before we get into the next part of what I want to talk about, which is some of the benefits of this, some additional benefits, and how you can become more involved in your irrevocable trust. I want to take a short break, and I want you to tell me, if you would, Rick. I know our last one of our last programs that you did was on specific tools of media marketing that can be used. So I'd like you to tell the viewers briefly, if you would, how R2 Visual Studios can help you with that topic.
Oh, absolutely, Bill. Thank you for asking. Yeah, we talked about branding, I believe it was the last show, personal branding, and how that can affect your perception out there to the world, folks that don't know you, that you're looking to bring on as potential clients. And I think the most important thing that we're able to provide for that person is professional headshots. The way you look online in a simple headshot can reflect your character, can reflect your brand, and can really affect the overall perception of how people see you. You know, for instance, if you're an attorney, you dress like an attorney. You don't dress in an aloha shirt unless that's your style. Unless you're in Hawaii, obviously.
Unless we're casual on the show.
Yeah, unless you're casual on the show. But you want to dress the part so you look credible, you look confident, but at the same time you look approachable. So we do all kinds of headshots, business headshots, personal headshots. We also do why hire me videos, which is another way to gain credibility,
right.
And really in a professional way tout your confidence, your skills, your ability to answer the needs of the potential customer.
And if I'm not mistaken, you just recently did a headshot for an attorney who's a friend of mine.
Yes, yeah, we did.
Who I recommended to you, and I know for a fact he was extremely pleased by that. So these types of things, and again, you can always educate these people to be able to use some of the other tools we talked about in that show that we did.
Sure.
But tell us how you can get a hold of R2.
Yeah, folks, if you ever have a need and you're in Southern California, I'll travel, so it really doesn't matter. You can reach me at rick@r2visualstudios.com. My partner and I are available at any time to do your headshots or collaborate on a Why Hire Me video for your website. And again, it's rick@r2visualstudios.com or 949-667-1182.
Good. And by the way, everybody should know, for the record, that I'm not Rick's partner in that business. He has another partner in that business who is experienced in that business. That's not me.
Good point.
I'm the DIY guy at home and in my office, but not to the extent Rick and his partner do this great job that they do. Okay, I want to get back and talk a little bit about, now let's talk about how you can become more involved in your irrevocable trust. You're going to set up the irrevocable trust for tax and or asset protection purposes. And it can be a combination, of course. And we talked a little bit about, in the first segment of the show, how you cannot be the trustee of the trust and how you cannot be a beneficiary of the trust. But there is a new trust that has had some court testing, but it's generally new in the area of estate planning, and it's called a Domestic Asset Protection Trust, and for short it's called ADAPT, D-A-P-T.
Interesting. Tell us a little bit more about that, because it's certainly new to me.
Yeah, well, it is to a lot of people, and the best places I would tell people to go would be Alaska, Nevada, and Wyoming. They're the best places to set up a trust like this. There are some requirements, and we'll go through a couple of those. So let's say you want to set up ADAPT. Well, one of the things you can do with a domestic asset protection trust is you can retain the power to remove the trustee and put another trustee in place and change beneficiaries. You cannot do that normally, because once you pick your trustee, I mean, you set up your trust with successor trustees and things of that nature. But in this instance, you can go in and you can make a change in a trustee relationship. You can make a change in beneficiaries, and you can set up a domestic asset protection trust in the following way. Here's the part I love about this. Let's say your wife's in business, Rick, with you, and you own a mom and pop shop or whatever it is you do, and let's assume you each own 50% of the business. You wouldn't have a problem giving your wife 50% of the business, right?
In general, no.
I don't think. Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it. Yeah. So, let's say you want to set up your own trusts. and you each take and you seed, you gift a portion or percentage of that business to the trust. So
you're talking about each of us.
Each of you.
Okay.
So she takes, 20% of her business and seeds it to the trust. You take 20% of business and you seed it to your trust. Now you sell the rest of the business to the trust. Now the trust owns your half of the business, and her trust owns her half of the business, right?
Okay.
And in those two trusts, you can do what? What would you guess? Do you have a good educated guess as to what you might be able to do?
No, but I'm sure you're going to tell us.
Okay.
Right?
You make each other the beneficiary of that percentage of the business. So you're the beneficiary of the 50% of her business, and she's the beneficiary of the 50% of your business.
Interesting.
And now, right, you don't own your 50%. The trust does. She doesn't own her 50%. The trust does. But you're beneficiaries of each other's trusts. So the spouses can be the beneficiaries in a domestic asset protection trust, whereby that business can come back to them if one dies. So now you're 50% of your bid. God forbid your spouse passes away. Your 50% of the business is in the trust, that the domestic asset protection trust, but you now receive 50% of that business back as a result of your spouse passing.
Oh, interesting. So what caused the development of this type of structure?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with how do I really secure my assets and have them totally protected but have a little more control. For years, there was a lack of control other than the manners we discussed in the first half of the show. Some people will think of that as, control, but to a limited extent. Here, people wanted a way to be able to have a say in what they were selling to the third-party trust. And the way you have that say, or one of the ways you have the say, is to be able to become a beneficiary under certain circumstances. One of the ways you have that say is to be able to make a change in the trustee. And one of the ways you have a say is to be able to change beneficiaries. Because remember, a trust is set up for purposes of security, not only in terms of securing assets from creditors and malicious litigation, but securing it so it will pass in the most convenient way possible to the beneficiaries that you want without having to go to probate.
Okay. It sounds like there's a huge amount of advantages to this type of structure, but let me ask you on the flip side of that, is there any downside to
well,
this?
There's always the
I mean, that would be different than normal.
Well, let's just turn this on its head and flip it here for a second. You don't have the control that you would have under most circumstances where you would have your business inside a revocable trust. You would have the limited protection that business provides you by having your personal assets protected, but the business assets could be reached if there was a lawsuit against your business. There are distinct disadvantages from the standpoint of having maybe a smaller estate. In other words, is it worth it to you is your concern about what might happen to your assets of such a nature that you would want to lose this amount of control if you have a small estate? Would you have the same tax advantages if you have a smaller estate? Most often, I will confess, a domestic asset protection trust is put into place when you have someone who's got a fairly large estate. So they can take advantage of both tax and asset protection principles.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's essentially it. But
yeah.
I mean, well, let's put it this way, Rick. If you were going to decide, you said to me, Bill, I'd like you to do a trust for me. What would be one of the first reasons you would decide to do a trust?
Well, I want to make sure that my spouse and my kids are taken care of,
okay.
And then also make sure that the business is protected.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Would you think? Well, remember, the business would not be protected in an irrevocable trust the way it would be in an irrevocable trust.
Correct.
But again, depending on your goals, let me put it another way. Would you say that your goals would be a little different than maybe Donald Trump's goals?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I keep urging people to sit down with their attorney and talk about. What are the goals that you want to accomplish? How big is your estate? What's the amount of control you want to have, which will be a lead-in or a segue right from that question. How big is your estate will be a segue into how much control do you want to have. It's going to go be related, very, very much related. But the thing that the viewers and our listeners have to keep in mind is that the revocable trust is a way to protect your assets from probate. An irrevocable trust is a way to protect your assets from probate and from malicious litigation and creditors. That's the major distinction between the two trusts in my view.
Okay.
The other distinction, of course, being with an irrevocable trust, you have much more control. You can revoke it any time you want, and accordingly, that's why it doesn't always provide the kind of protection that an irrevocable trust provides.
So let me ask you this question. So since this is a relatively new structure that's only available in, I think you mentioned 3 states?
No, it's available in many states, but not all states. But those are the 3 states that I recommended, which would be Nevada, Wyoming, and Alaska, because they have some of the best ways to establish this trust. I don't want to get too far afield and talk about those, but they have ways that make it advantageous for you to go to those states. They make it a little bit more functional and a little bit easier to accomplish. But one of the things I do want to point out, and that's a great tie-in, Rick, is when you go to another state, you should use a trustee in that state. So getting back to the question you asked earlier on in the program, who do you pick as the trustee? Well, you would probably pick an institutional company of some sort to run your trust if you're going to go to those 3 states or any other state outside of California.
Yeah.
Because you want to provide a tie between the trust and what you're doing here outside of state. And the courts will look to who you have as the trustee. What's your connection to Wyoming, Alaska, or Nevada? Well, your connection is going to be the trustee that you employ within that state.
And that's something that you could help the viewers out with.
Absolutely.
If they get to that point, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Very good.
I hope this has been helpful to the viewers. It's it's extremely huge topic, and I would urge you to please see your attorney and your accountant to carry this conversation further. It's convoluted if you don't sit down and have the right conversation and have the right goals in mind.
Yeah, folks, we've just touched, or Bill's just touched, the tip of the iceberg. I think the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this subject. And if you have further questions and want to connect with Bill, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me, of course, is my phone number is 949 area code 413-6535 or 949-698-6222, or of course Bill at wfblegalconsulting.com. I wanted to end the show, Rick, if I might, with a advertisement for our sponsor, and we have a couple of different sponsors in the watch industry. One of them is WOW TV, and WOW, W-O-W, stands for World of Watches. If you're interested in an exquisite timepiece, a luxury timepiece, or something that is Swiss-made but yet $59, you can go to worldofwatches.com. The show broadcasts live on DirecTV, Channel 227, and also at World of Watches TV every Saturday and Sunday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And they have just tremendous timepieces at extremely great prices. And what I mean by that is if you're buying a $20,000 watch, you're going to save an unbelievable amount of money. If you're buying a $200 watch, you're going to save an unbelievable amount of money. So much so that they actually have Swiss timepieces, and by that I mean timepieces with Swiss-made movements that start. The one I saw this weekend was $41.99, and I'm telling you, this is quality stuff. I'm not advertising crap here. I mean, I'm a timepiece guy, and this was quality stuff. So check it out, worldofwatches.com. Excuse me. Every Saturday and Sunday, and of course you can go to the website anytime you want. My good friend Jim Skelton is one of the hosts of the show, and he'll help you out in any way he can. What I'd like to do in the remaining portion of the show, Rick, is to have you to tell us what next week's show is going to be all about.
Oh, thank you, Bill. Well, next week is kind of a carryover from a previous show, the why, what, and how of your brand, personal branding, some of the an extension of online media marketing. And this is really all about, it's going to be all about how to build your audience. There's different topics, subtopics within that, how to grow it organically versus using a paid technique.
Yes.
What some of the advantages and disadvantages of both are.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to that, and I'll put you in the hot seat for that one. And I just want to end the show before we say goodbye by saying, some of this stuff we want to expose you to, so you know it's out there and you might decide you want to explore it, or just to get a little more information about it. We don't expect everyone who listens to every show to go out and all of a sudden do everything that we tell them to do, because all of your needs are different. But please always feel free to ask us questions by emailing us or calling into the show, and we're happy to provide you any additional information we can. And if it gets needs to get more extensive than that, then of course you can sit down with one of us. So with that, I'd like to say so long until next week's show. Rick, thanks for being here as always. And ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week at 10 a.m.
All right, folks. See you then.
Okay.